the egg. The egg is what we put on the Seder plate, which points to its importance for the Seder and the holiday of Passover. What is the significance of that egg? So our sages tell us that on the Seder plate, we have a commemoration of the Paschal offering. That's the zroa, the shank bone, or the custom for many is to use a chicken neck. That commemorates the Paschal offering. And the egg commemorates the Chagiga offering, the festival offering. Because when you ate the Paschal offering, when we had the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, the Paschal offering had to be eaten al hasova, when you're satiated, not as when you're very hungry, ravenously hungry, just pouncing on the meat and eating it in a disrespectful manner. That's not befitting a Korban Pesach, which is a symbol of royalty and of freedom. So that's why we first would have the festival offering and eat the meat, and then, when we're more or less sated, we would then eat the Paschal offering as a dessert. That would be the final thing that we would eat at the Seder. But the question remains, why do we use an egg for this purpose? If we want to commemorate the Chagiga offering, why not use a piece of meat, just as we do for the Paschal offering? We use either a shank bone or a chicken neck, which has a closer resemblance to the original than the egg. So one of the reasons given for the egg in particular, based on the Jerusalem Talmud, is that in Aramaic, the word for egg is beya, and beya also has the meaning of desire. And it's telling us that God desires to redeem us. But the question is, the word beya means desire, but it doesn't say that God's desire is for our redemption. That is added on, but where do we find in the word beya any recognition, any relevance to the idea of redemption? It's not at all about redemption, it's just about desire. This leads us to the obvious conclusion that when we talk about God's desire, what is God's desire? What is his greatest desire? What is his all-encompassing desire? It is to redeem us. Now that sounds pretty drastic and pretty radical to say that all that God wants is to redeem us, and the answer is yes. The Medrash tells us that the reason why God created this world is nisava. He had a desire to have a dwelling place in the lowest of realms. In other words, he created a world in which God's presence is concealed to the point where it's possible for people to deny God's existence, for people to live in a way that is contrary to God's will, to fight and wage war with God. And in this godless world, God planted us human beings, and the Jewish people in particular, with all of their observances of all the commandments, the study of Torah, to bring God back into this vacuum, which is the physical world. And when that occurs, that fulfills God's very desire for creation. That will happen and fully materialize in the Messianic age, the seeds of which were already planted at the Exodus from Egypt, and we nourish and nurture that seed every time we celebrate Pesach. So what is God's ultimate desire? To redeem us, because as long as we are in exile, God's plan cannot come to fruition. The world is still shrouded in this darkness of exile. So God's ultimate desire is to get us out of exile. And that's why the egg is the best symbol, because the egg in Aramaic means to desire. But there's another part to this. Not only is it God's desire, and not only are we trying to celebrate the idea that God desires to redeem us, but it's also our desire. What is a human being's greatest desire? The human being's greatest desire is to be liberated. Excuse me. And I'm basing this on an enigmatic word in the Mishnah. The Mishnah in Tractate Bava Kama speaks of the 4 different kinds of torts, of damages: an ox, and a pit, a fire, but one of the 4 is called maveh. And maveh is a word that doesn't appear any other place in the entire body of the Mishnah, as far as I know. And the Talmud is even not sure what the word means. And one of the opinions is that the word maveh, ze adam, that refers to a human being. If a human being does damage through his own efforts, through his own actions. But where do we find that the word maveh means human? And the Talmud quotes a verse in Isaiah where it talks about how im tivayun bayu, if you will desire, you will ask for redemption, that's how it's understood, then the redemption will come. And that word tivayun is cognate, it's related to the word mava. So the Gemara, the Talmud, explains that mava refers to a human being because a human being is one who desires redemption. Well, aren't there so many other words for human being? There's Adam, Ish, Gever, Enosh. Why does the Mishnah use the word mava? Because it's trying to tell us and impart a very powerful message that the essence of humanity is the desire for redemption, the desire to fulfill God's desire. But what happens? Because we also have an animal soul that obfuscates, it covers up the soul's desire, and we're able to do things that are contrary to God's will and contrary to who we really are deep down. We don't want to cause the damage. It's the animal soul within us that allows that to happen. So what we're looking at over here is the egg that symbolizes God's ultimate desire and our ultimate desire. But then the question could still be asked, why do we have to represent this idea through an egg? An egg in particular. What's the egg's physical nature have to do with desire? And the answer lies in a unique quality that an egg has. The more you boil it, the harder it gets. Most foods, the more you subject it to heat, the softer it gets. The egg becomes harder and harder. What does that tell us? When we're in exile for close to 2,000 years, one would imagine, because this is generally the way human nature operates, that when you have a desire for something, as soon as you feel the need for it, the desire is very strong. But as time passes and your desire is not fulfilled, your hopes are dashed, what happens is that the desire starts to dissipate, it starts to weaken. But when it comes to the desire for Mashiach, for the coming of Mashiach and the final redemption, the Jewish people have demonstrated that they are Am Kshei Oref. They are a stiff-necked people. The word for stiff here, Kshei, also means hard. We are hard-boiled eggs. The longer we have been subjected to the fire, to the destructive forces of exile, the more we want and we desire and we demand that God bring us the redemption. Not because we're demanding something that God doesn't want. It's something that God himself wants, but he wants us to express our own desire, that our desire is not going to get weaker with the passage of time, but it will get stronger and stronger. We are hard-boiled eggs, and that's the powerful symbol that we put on the Seder plate.